Coming in Facebook, coming in YouTube, getting ready to start my show, Jimmy Rants, over on Instagram Live. And we got a good show in store for you guys today. Those of you that like kind of philosophical slash practical life skills, today's episode is going to be really helpful about a lot of things that you have in your life. What's up, Norma? Thank you for being here, always being here. Really appreciate you. Hello, Danette. Hello, Debbie. Debbie, did I see it's your birthday today? I think I saw that on Facebook today. I meant to write happy birthday on your wall, but I had a million comments I was trying to get through and respond to. But if it is your birthday, happy birthday, Debbie. But thank you for being here. And let's see over here on, yep, Shirley, there's my girl. Hey, Shirley, how are you today? Thank you for being here on Jimmy Rants. Hello, Kira. Hello, Wayne. Thank you guys for being here today. Got my show, Jimmy Rants, coming up here in a few more minutes. I always like to come on early with you guys. I have an interview today at 2 o'clock for the Living La Vida Low Carb show. This guy I met back during my paleo days says, yes, it's my birthday. 61 years young today. Way to go, Debbie. This guy, Dean Dwyer, I met back in the paleo days, and I remember meeting him at the Paleo FX meeting in 12. And what like a cool dude he was. I mean, he's just like so full of energy. He talks really fast, so I'm gonna have to slow him down for my podcast here today. But he had a great success story using paleo and mindset types of things. And he was always a thinker, and I love those kinds of people in my life. And so I lost touch with him for a few years, and quite frankly, he's been offline for about 4 or 5 years himself, and he only recently came back online. And it turns out he had gained back all of his weight. He had fallen out of practice and was trying to figure out what happened. And about a year or so ago, he decided to implement some of these mindset strategies, and he got his body fat percentage down to 10%, and he's just doing a really good job. So he is a gabber and a half. Like, I like to talk, but he makes me shameful about how good he talks. And he talks really fast. So I have that conversation with him at 2 o'clock today. So anyway, something new I'm doing with my podcast on Wednesday is I'm doing video chats. So what I'm doing is I'm going to go on the camera that I use for Instagram for Jimmy Rants, and I'll be right here in Jimmy Rants studio, and I will have these conversations that will then go up to YouTube as a Jimmy Rants bonus episode. And so the Wednesday podcast of Living La Vida Low Carb show each week is always a brand new interview. Tuesdays we do Jimmy Rants replay of the best of, and then Wednesdays I do a new interview. So those interviews on Wednesday are now going to be video and audio. So they'll still air on the podcast, but we're going to put them up over on my YouTube channel so that you guys over there can enjoy that. Hello, Kelly and Nancy and Bonnie, Jessica. What's up, Jessica? So we're going to start doing that as the format for the Living La Vida Low Carb show. And so I do interview him at 2 o'clock today. I actually have a lady lined up for Thursday to interview. She's a black woman who, hello, Kim Cole, thanks for being here, who has some really interesting information about, you know, how we make fun of fat people and that whole fat discrimination. She said it actually started out with black women, and that this discrimination against fat people in general today actually started as a racial discrimination against black women. So I can't wait to interview her to learn about that a little more as well. Just so many fascinating guests coming up on my show. What's up, Tammy? Thank you for being here today. So if you joined us today here on my Facebook page, here on YouTube, we are getting ready to start my show, Jimmy Rants. What's up, Pamela? Over on Instagram. So let's get this show on the road. Got a great philosophical slash practical life skill show in store for you here today. And if you guys are ready, be sure to share here, by the way. You can share it on your personal Facebook page and any group that you're a part of. You can also share this. So thank you all for being here, and here we go. So how exactly do you talk to someone that you agree with? We're going to find out here today on Jimmy Rants. Click on that little box down there in the corner, takes you straight to IGTV for today's episode of Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website. And as always, you want to get engaged live, you got to come over to where all the fun people are. That is Instagram. I am at Livin' Low Carb Man over there, LIVINLOWCARBMAN. Once you're there, engage live in the content. We also have stories and my regular page, but we do go live here Monday through Friday Eastern Standard Time. Sometimes in the evenings at 5, lately not so much because Jimmy Moore's been tired in the afternoon, and sometimes on the weekend, but almost always at 11 a.m. Eastern Time right here on Instagram. We also simulcast over here on my Facebook page, so thank you guys for being here. Thank you, Liz. I see you just popped in. And finally, we are on my YouTube stream as well, so thank you guys for watching Jimmy Rants. Okay, if you missed the live, it's okay. You can still watch it on replay. We put the replay up over on IGTV right after the show is over, so go check that out. We also put them up over on YouTube, usually about an hour after I'm done with the show. It is up over on YouTube. Just type in a keyword, Jimmy Rants. You will find the show. On Tuesdays, we also do a re-airing of Jimmy Rants on my popular podcast called the Livin' La Vida Low Carb Show. So go to llvlc.com, and today is Tuesday, so you'll be able to see a new episode. We did a conglomeration of the ones recently about Diabetes Canada, now accepting low carb diets. I had a couple of other Jimmy Rants I did about diabetes and low carb. And so anyway, go listen to that today, llvlc.com, or wherever you listen to podcasts for the Livin' La Vida Low Carb Show. And then finally, we have JimmyRants.com, the official website for this show. You can see all the past episodes there. We also have a way for you to support the show. We don't have any sponsors on this show. Somebody asked last week, oh no, did you lose your sponsors? No, I haven't ever had sponsors on here. I did that by design. I really wanted to do this as a labor of love, but I do come on here quite a bit. I work very hard to bring you guys fresh content. So if you are getting value added to your life from this show, then I would appreciate it if you add value back to my life. Click on that Patreon link, and any donation you can give would be greatly appreciated. Okay, you guys, so today I have one of these life application types of Jimmy Rants for you. And I like talking philosophy, life skills, and this kinds of thing, because when situations come up, you need skills to be able to handle the things that come your way. And I think we're all looking for applicable skills in a wide variety of areas of our life. Because once you have skills in place, then you can apply them to the diet world. You can apply them to conversations that you have with people, either on social media or in real life. And so today I want to talk about, and I have a great article from NBC News actually, about how you can effectively engage with someone that you disagree with. And I think it's become this national pastime that it doesn't matter what someone says online, someone is going to have to offer up a contrarian view. And sometimes those people that offer up the contrarian views, their mama didn't teach them how to act right in public because they're not very nice. And there's certain skills that if you want to have a conversation, and I think you should have conversations, if you want to have a conversation with someone that you don't agree with, like take for example, I see my buddy Ted Naiman just popped over here on Facebook. What's up, Ted? Thanks for being here. He and I have had a friendly conversation and basically a disagreement about the role of protein in a ketogenic diet. I still love Ted to death. I don't have to make him my mortal enemy just because he happens to think you need a higher protein intake in your diet. And I happen to think that a little bit higher fat intake is probably helpful. So at the end of the day, you're going to have disagreements with people. But the problem is people let disagreements become a disagreeability, and that's never okay. So I have this article that kind of gets into how you talk to people that you don't agree with and how you can have a productive conversation. We're seeing this happening quite a bit out there, even about the race relations and some of the ways people are communicating. It's become this hot potato topic, and there's a lot of disagreement. And the funny part is, the people who disagree, they just want you to hear their point and they're not interested in hearing the other side. And that goes on both sides of the issue, of any issue. If your intention is just to be heard and not to listen, then how do you actually expect anything to happen with that? With knowledge, with trying to come to an understanding and trying to come to maybe some common ground that you have. I've been trying to do this with the vegans for years. Okay, vegans, you believe that a plant-based diet is healthy. What are those core things that you believe that cross over with the core things that I believe as a ketogenic dieter, leaning carnivore? What can we believe? I think we both believe processed foods are crap. I think we both believe that food quality is a good idea, that you want to try to get the best nutrient dense, real whole foods that you possibly can. I mean, there's a lot of crossover things that we believe in, but then it gets lost in the shuffle of, oh, if you eat vegan, you're going to be gaunt because you're vitamin B12 deficient and you're not getting essential amino acids and da 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 da. And then they say, oh, well, you're going to get heart disease because you eat all that red meat that we know will give you cancer and da 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 da. And so they always focus on the differences and not on the things you agree on. And I know you guys have seen that in the nutritional health space. It's been out there forever. Trust me, I've seen it. Every incarnation of everything that has happened. I've seen several cycles of it now, being online as long as I have. And it just doesn't seem to go away. So let's talk about this idea of how you effectively engage with someone that you actively disagree with. Whether it's about who does the dishes at home, who takes out the trash, things like gun control, all of the same rules apply when you're having discussions. There's value in having conversations with people with whom you don't necessarily see eye to eye. In fact, CNN used to have a TV show in the 90s. It was one of the most popular shows on cable, called Crossfire. And what they did was they took an issue and they got one person on one side of the issue, one person on the other side of the issue. They literally were sitting across the table from one another, and it was pow, 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 just having this conversation back and forth. And at the end of those conversations, they would go out and have a drink. Those days in America, sadly, are long gone. You might even evolve your perspective on a topic by talking to someone of the opposite persuasion. Let's go back to Ted for a moment. Ted, you'll be pleased to know that even though we've had our differences and you pushed high protein, I pushed high fat, I now see the value of adding in more protein into my diet. And I see a lot of the points that you were making, and I have adjusted my philosophy as such. And so thank you for that. Thank you for always being courteous to me and kind to me. I definitely want to bring you back on the Live and La Vida Low Carb show sometime to maybe talk about how you effectively communicate that and why it's so important. Because language is one thing, tone is another thing. There's so many things that can make a conversation go crazy on you. And it's not until you contemplate the main points and then ponder them and see how they apply to your life that you actually begin to expand your knowledge and your perspective begins to evolve. So again, thank you for that. You might even bolster your argument for why you disagree. You might learn something new about your conversation partner. This is the fun part too. If I disagree with someone, I don't automatically think they're a bad person. If I disagree with them, let me hear their heart. Let me hear what it is that they're saying. And in here, sometimes you hear something that you didn't see before because you were so blinded by your own biases. I can tell you, talking about this race relations thing, especially over here on Facebook, has been quite the education for me, because people have known me for many years. I have not been shy about sharing a lot of things about a lot of things. And so people have kind of gotten somewhat of a gauge of who they think I am. And so I start posting about this, and some of those same people just jump to the conclusion that I was something that's totally different than what they've always believed. Why did they do that? Because they had certain biases in their head that when someone does or says X, therefore they must be X label. You guys have seen that. You probably have been a victim of that. The funniest one is I've been a lifelong conservative Christian, and I've been called a liberal, socialist, violent, supporting, I mean, you name it, I've been called every name. And it's funny to me how people have that kind of knee-jerk reaction because, again, they're not interested in having a conversation or engaging. They're only interested in what they believe and getting their voice heard and not listening to you. By the way, on the race relation stuff, I've basically been saying, look, I don't care about the politics of it. I don't care about anything except those people who feel they have been oppressed and unheard. I want to find out why they feel that way. And if it's only a perception, not a reality, it's their reality. So let's find out why they have that perception. If it's only a perception, or if it's reality, let's find out how we can resolve that so we can move forward. Like, I'm trying to be kind of a peacemaker in this communication, but people hear, oh, you're all about this hateful group, Black Lives Matter, and da-da-da. I'm like, no, I'm not. Like, listen to the words I say, and let's communicate clearly, which is what we're going to learn in this post today. When we're respecting one another and acting like grown-ups, yeah, good luck with that online, such conversations can be really interesting. And this has been the fun part. When people have gotten over their biases, when people have gotten over wanting to be heard, especially here on Facebook, if you cut through all that muckety muck and you find the people who are actually trying to listen, trying to engage, leaving the sarcasm out, leaving out the snarky comments, leaving out the links to Larry Elder and Constance, whatever her last name is, Owens, I think it is. When you kind of leave all those things to the side and you look for people actually engaging in what you're saying, sometimes you find some really interesting insights. And you have belief systems that are shared that then someone else shares, oh, well, what about this belief system? And it becomes this really nice conversation. Don't you wish you could have those kind of conversations in your real life, or especially online? I think online is, the Pandora's box is open. It's just ugly. And of course, it's a presidential political election year, so that doesn't help either. Everybody has their opinions about everything. Perhaps too often, respect falls by the wayside, and we channel in our inner 5-year-old selves rather than the cool, calm, rational adults we can be. Man, is that not true? Like, just spend a few minutes online on a social media channel, and you will see a bunch of 5-year-olds complaining about somebody touching them. Mommy, he's touching me. I don't like him. He's looking at me. Doesn't it feel that way sometimes with the immaturity that happens online? And we act like we're evolved and we're so much more sophisticated than the children of the world. No, we're not. We're just a bunch of big adults that are kids, right? We often need to have difficult conversations about things we disagree with so we can find solutions, particularly when it comes to our family, our partner, and close friends. According to Holly Weeks, an adjunct lecturer in public policy at the Harvard Kennedy School of Government, she actually teaches communication. She's the author of a book called Failure to Communicate: How Conversations Go Wrong and What You Can Do to Right Them. Man, like, this skill, if you can learn how to communicate with another human being, how much of the crap we have to like wade through online would just go away if everybody could apply the skills of communication. Think about discussing things like when someone's feelings have been hurt, or different opinions on how two partners are spending their money. The price tag of not having that conversation is very high. And see, this is the thing. People are like, well, I don't know why we have to talk about race relations. Everybody knows racism exists. They hate us. We hate them. what else is there to talk about? And I'm like, wow, that's kind of a jaded position to take. Or there's nothing we can do about it, so why even talk about it? Again, jaded position to take. I am one of those people whose brain says, hey, let's be a part of the process of healing and fixing and stop being a part of why it continues on. Because silence does not make it go away. Not having conversations does not resolve things. Sometimes backing away and cooling down your emotions about things could be helpful, but just totally dropping something that definitely needs to be talked about does not solve anything. And yet that is the modus operandi that a lot of people work under when it comes to having these difficult conversations about anything. And again, if you joined us late, we're talking about an applicable life skill here today of how you engage with someone that you disagree with. It happens all the time in every aspect of life, when it comes to diet, when it comes to politics, when it comes to talking about race relations, anything at all, and even your spouse at home. All of these things, effectively communicating when you have a disagreement with someone, there's a tact to it. We're going to learn some skills from this article I'm reading from. Even when it's not a disagreement that requires you to solve it, there may still be cost to not having the conversations. This is something I've run into talking about race relations. People are like, well, what's your solution? I'm like, okay, I will get to a solution once we recognize and everyone recognizes that there is a problem that needs to be addressed. You don't solve something that certain people don't even think's a problem yet. You have to identify what the problem is, and then once people agree that there is a problem, then let's work on solution. Talking with a friend with whom you disagree about things like whether religion should be taught in schools or about whether a one-payer healthcare system is most judicious can lead to a better understanding of that issue for both of you. You may even happen upon some common ground on which you agree. It strengthens your perspective to know more clearly why your views stand up to contradictory ones, she adds, talking about Susan Heitler, that's the she. She's the author and a psychologist, the author of The Power of Two, Secrets to a Strong and Loving Marriage. And if you're someone who works in a field like politics, she says one of the basic rules is to know abundantly what your enemy believes. I don't like that term enemy. Maybe your adversary that has a contradictory viewpoint. They're not my enemy. But anyway, knowing the other side's position very well. So like if you believe in some position, take the exact opposite position. In fact, when you are in college and you take a debate class, sometimes they'll have you like write out like what you believe, like different, like are you pro or con on various issues? And what they'll do is they'll pit you up against someone and they'll make you take the opposite position to what you personally believe. So what that does is it makes you have to argue for the thing you're against. Do you know how hard that is for a lot of people to do? That if you're for gun control and then you suddenly have to explain and make the argument why people should have guns, that like gives a little bit of an aneurysm to some people because they're like, wait a minute, I don't believe in this, but I have to make the argument. And so you need to know what the arguments are for what you believe, but you also need to know abundantly what the arguments are against what you believe. It's a good skill that if you could do that with almost every area of your life, understand why there's this belief. Like with this race relations thing, a lot of people are like, well, racism doesn't exist. And I'm like, okay, but what about the person who is has black skin and they feel that it does exist? What do you do with that? Put yourself in their shoes. How does that feel? And do you want them to continue to feel that way? Very interesting exercise that will broaden your horizons and make you less dogmatic about things. If you have these conversations, it can deepen your personal relationships to have those conversations happening and come to a better understanding of the people that you spend your time with. Topics like politics and religion get to the core of your identity, says Matteo Travisan, an executive coach and leadership trainer at Fearless Future Coaching. One could argue that if we don't talk about things, then we really don't know each other. And social media is like the world's worst for it. Like, what do you know about someone on social media? You know what they post. Is what they post everything about their life? Not a chance. I would say it barely even scratches the surface. Some people overshare, so you know a lot more about them than others. But for the people that just kind of share casually what's going on in their life, you're not really getting an idea of who they are as people. And so when you engage with people that you don't really know that well, and you come at them strong with your belief system, and then they come back at you strong with their belief system, neither one of you knows who each other is. And whether we want to admit it or not, we actually prejudge each other. We actually look at that other person and we make an assessment of who we think they are based on what their presence is like on social media and based on what they're saying to us in that moment, not knowing any of the context of how they got to that belief system, and vice versa. They don't know anything about the context of who you are just based on what they see online, and they don't know anything about what the context is of how you came to that conclusion of your belief. Do you see why there's such strife on social media? Why you have all of these kind of disagreements that happen between seemingly well-respected people, and yet they allow their own lack of knowledge of each other to be on full display for everyone to see. This is why when I engage with someone online that I don't know, I always take a much softer tone, trying to at least see where they're coming from. Even if somebody says something incredibly ugly to me, I do my best to try to understand why they came to that judgment of me and then have that conversation. That's a hard thing to do, by the way. So you just kind of get used to it after a while. So whether you disagree with your partner about when you want to have your first child, or you're disagreeing with a friend of a friend that you've just met at a dinner party about income taxes, the skills required to make these conversations worthwhile are pretty much the same ones. So we are giving you applicable skills here today that no matter what you talk about in your life, no matter what situation that this can apply to, this is a good applicable skill to know how to effectively engage with somebody even when you don't have agreement. It's not that the skills are any different in all these situations, but the emotional load that the conversations carry is different, and it's what makes them feel so different. So you could talk about what your favorite ice cream flavor is. Mine, Rocky Road, by the way. But then you can go to, what do you think about abortion? Oh, crap, you just opened up a whole floodgate of emotional attachment. Or, as we've been seeing lately, what do you think about race relations? Again, open the floodgate of emotions. And we have to know that when we're having these conversations, that not all conversations are created equal, and that some of them you're going to have to apply skills more than others. So let's look at what these 9 skills are for how you effectively engage with someone that you disagree with. You guys ready? All right, here we go. Number 1, decide if you want to go there. Step 1 is deciding whether that conversation is worth it or not. If it's an argument with your spouse over whether one of you is going to accept a job offer that will require the family to move, then you need to have that talk. If it's a matter of asking a friend why she believes abortion should be banned and you disagree with that, it might be worth asking yourself first why you want to have that conversation with this person. Do you want to learn why your friend feels that way? Or do you want to change her mind? I don't have to have a conversation with someone I disagree with to know something about their perspective. You can read about it, find out about it from someone else. If you're trying to change the person's mind, however, the goal of that conversation is not then learning and understanding. That's not really a conversation. It becomes a lecture, and I'm seeing this quite a bit. People are not wanting to have conversations about these controversial issues. Let's take COVID-19, for example. There's some people that, oh, it's been a hoax from the beginning. And then there's other people, oh my gosh, we needed to take this seriously. It's still very serious. We need to wear the mask. We need to distance, blah, 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 blah. And so if you're going to have a conversation with the goal of trying to change someone's mind, you're not going into that with an active listening ear. And so do you really think you're going to change anyone's mind by having the conversation? A real conversation and deciding whether you want to go there or not should come at it from the perspective of, okay, I have a belief system in place, but I also am open-minded enough to say, I respect this person I'm going to talk to enough to hear them out and hear their arguments for why they believe what they believe. If you look online at any of the conversations, especially here on Facebook, about the race relation stuff, for example, there's a lot of people that are lecturing. And lecturing doesn't get you anywhere. If you go on there, and I would encourage you to do this, if you have a belief system, but you want to understand why someone else believes the opposite of you, rather than coming in there guns blazing with what you believe, why don't you ask questions? And do it in a soft tone. Do it in a kind manner. And you might be surprised what you learn. You may solidify what you believe and why you believe it, and that's a good end result of a conversation with someone. Or somebody might say something that makes you go, whoa, I never thought of it that way. And I'll give you an example for me. So that Beth girl that taught me here on Instagram about 3 weeks ago about what like Black Lives Matter means. And she explained it about, that it's not that all lives don't matter. It's that right now, Black people feel oppressed and unheard. And so therefore you say Black Lives Matter to put the attention on them. And so that for the first time since hearing that Black Lives Matter phrase, that was the first time it clicked in my head. Oh my God, that's what it means. I was like, what? Like, and another triggering one lately is white privilege. So there's a lot of white people that get upset when they hear that. Well, I don't have any privilege. I've had to work for everything in my life. And it's not about that at all. Again, it got explained to me to the point that it clicked that, oh, white privilege means that because you have white skin, you have only had the normal things that you've had to deal with in your life, the normal obstacles. But because I have black skin, I not only have all those same problems that you do, but I now have an added layer of dealing with people judging me simply from the color of my skin and the challenges that come from that. So therefore, you have a white privilege. It probably should be called black unprivilege more than white privilege. But that's what it means. And so when people explain these things, even though you've heard them and you've had the knee-jerk reaction to these things, when they explain them and you get an understanding of where they're coming from, you kind of go, okay, maybe that belief system that I had wasn't so right after all. You see how this works? Think too about how the conversation will be received by the other person. Some people love getting into a very complex discussion. Some people have, on some topics, just feel like you're trying to push their buttons, which doesn't necessarily make for a pleasant dinner party conversation or coffee time. It's okay not to go there, and when someone else brings up the topic, to tell them that you don't want to go there. I saw over here on Facebook today, one of my black friends in the keto community was sharing very openly on his Facebook page that every time he sees a white person post the murder statistics of black people, that he feels hurt by that. And it just takes away from what he thinks is the main discussion having. And so for him, he's like, well, if you're going to do that kind of discussion and engaging with somebody, I'd rather you not use that tactic because it evokes such an emotion in him. And so just be aware of that. Decide if you even want to go there or not. Number 2, ask if you can ask about it. This is a really good one too. Still not sure of a topic you want to broach is too sensitive? Just ask. Teaching people how to do a better and more meaningful conversation is what Georgie Nightingale is about. She is a conversation coach. And she said, you and your conversation partner can make that decision together. Of course, this is more speaking one-on-one than social media, but I think it's okay if you want to put it out there. Hey, I want to talk about X. Are you okay with this? And see what happens. Simply stating that you know a topic is challenging and asking if they prefer to avoid it shows up front that you're making potentially volatile territory a safe place and that you care about their perspective. Note if the other person hesitates or answers in a guarded way, because that may be your clue that you need to move on. I can tell you the silence that has come from a lot of my white friends talking about race is they would love nothing more than for us to move on. That's a whole nother topic than what we're talking about here, but ask the people if it's okay to talk about it. And I think a lot of the people that aren't saying anything in this talking about race right now, they don't want to have the conversation because it's too uncomfortable. But uncomfortable in and of itself is not a reason not to have conversations. I think sometimes it's healthy to have uncomfortable. Here's the thing, when you go there and when you have those uncomfortable conversations, guess what happens? You take away the discomfort that comes from the conversation. You do. And once you start talking about these things that have always been taboo, then it's not as comfortable. You're more bold in speaking up and speaking out. Oh, well, we don't need to have any taboo topics, but apparently there still are some. Perk up your ears to emotional intensity too. The tone of someone's voice and absolutes like I absolutely hate or idiot or moronic can usually tip off the person you're talking with doesn't likely want to hear an alternative perspective. Well, if you don't want to hear idiot, moronic, racist, all these words, don't go on social media, because that's pretty much what's happening. I literally have had people on both Instagram and on Facebook write idiot with like a thumbs down or something. And I'm like, okay, thank you for your contribution to the conversation. Would you like to expand upon why you believe the person writing this, me, is an idiot? I usually never hear back. And so those little drive-by comments are certainly not helpful. Number 3, I love this one, guys. Watch this. Keep it neutral. Keep the conversation neutral starts from the very beginning. If you're asking questions about the other person's perspective, ask it in a way that shows you know the context of the situation, but that doesn't come off as boastful. So how many people come into this conversation on the race relations, for example, and they come at it with a true heart for wanting to learn why you wrote what you wrote? So I did this post this last week that showed the old colored people here, white people there, those kinds of signs. And I wasn't saying that we're still living under that auspice today, but instead said, you know, in our lifetime, this has been a reality. And so there's ramifications that have been passed down to the future generations since that happened. And, you know, kind of telling the whole story. And you should have seen people who came into that not with a neutral position, but with a highly volatile position, attack mode. It's as if I had triggered something in them that made them want to make their voice heard very forcefully. And I guess the more forceful the voice, the less harmful and less cutting my words were to them. I don't know, but it was fascinating to watch that, especially here on Facebook. I run 3 different pages on Facebook, and I think it was Keto Talk Discussion. It's well over 600 comments and counting on that one. And people have just been like, it's been kind of fascinating as kind of an observing it all unfolding, how people are not keeping things neutral. And if you just kept things neutral, you could actually have a real conversation. Don't ask so tentatively that you invite condescension. You want to start from neutral territory where no one's poking a stick in the other person's emotions, nor are they inviting the other person to do so. I can't tell you how many people have used sarcastic language to try to get me to come back at them. And I can't say I haven't felt like I wanted to come back, but I've always, when I've responded, I've always tried to be kind, soft, restating my position of why I'm talking about this, and it has nothing to do with all that other stuff. Yes, Larry Elder. Yes, Candace Owen. Yes, okay, thank you. Yes, the murder statistics. Thank you. That's not what I'm talking about here. But thank you for sharing, but that's not what I'm talking about here. And trying to keep that neutral position can be challenging when someone else is not keeping a neutral position. So, here's what you can do. Try saying, I know conservatives have strong opinions about X issue, but I'm not as familiar with why they feel this way about Y issue. Rather than saying, I feel silly that I don't know why conservatives feel this way about issue. Your question should not include an apology. Okay? So that is staying neutral. Number 4, start off the conversation with understanding. How many of these crazy things that we see online that people believe and people want to be engaged in and have an active voice in, how many people go into it trying to start off the conversation not with stating their point of view, but with trying to understand why someone else had their point of view? Grant your counterpart the premise and then argue from there. So if I'm making the premise that there's a certain segment of the black community who feels like they've been oppressed and pushed down and unheard for so long, someone could come into that, and they disagree with that, someone could come into the conversation and say, you know, I understand there are a lot of black people who feel that they are oppressed and down and not being heard. But I wonder if the reason they feel that way is because they've heard it from the media or they've been told that their entire lives. I wonder if that's the reason why they feel that way. Then I could come back and say, well, yeah, you know, that is a good point, and there's certainly this perception that because they feel that way, it's reality. And the perception has become reality as a result. And I think what we need to do is kind of have a heart for wanting to know why they believe that way. Yeah, I think we need to really understand why they feel that way. But in the meantime, we need to also not fall prey to some people using this for their advantage. Yeah, I disagree with that too. I think we need to focus on the people. Do you see the conversation that starts to happen because you start the conversation with an understanding of the position? How many people come in guns blazing their view, and not once do they stop to see what the other person's belief is and why they believe it? Instead of telling them they're wrong, you legitimately acknowledge their point of view and then explain why you disagree. It helps put edges around the problem and focus on which problem you want to solve. We're not arguing before we start to argue. And it can help keep things like, you just always want to spend more than what we can afford in a conversation between spouses, and we shouldn't have moved into such an expensive apartment, out of the equation. So if you don't come in with the accusations, because what happens, especially online, when people start making accusations and start labeling, can I tell you, I've been called so many labels this week that I've never been called in my life. All because that's what people immediately jump to in their head. Oh, you're just a socialist liberal. And I had somebody be very vulgar about what they wanted me to do to a black man's something down there, that I was like, okay, thank you for sharing. Like, do people write those things because it makes them feel better? Are they really trying to make an argument that they think is going to be an effective way to engage with someone that disagrees? I don't think most people go into conversations trying to effectively engage with someone they disagree with. I think they go into conversations simply to be heard and nothing more. And guys, that's the problem. When you're having conversations, you should be in a conversation with not having your voice heard, but hearing the other voice and trying to understand why they believe. And obviously, it needs to be reciprocated. They need to come into the conversation not expressing their view, but trying to understand why you believe what you believe. Like, it's sad that we have to teach this life skill to grown adults who should know better, but it's very few people that know this. Number 5, look for where you agree. We talked about this one earlier. Find those areas of common ground. Listen with a good ear. Listen for what makes sense about what that person has said, rather than listening for how you can show what's wrong with it. Oh, how many people hear some point and the first thing they want to do is, no, here's my counterpoint. No. What we should be doing is hearing what people have in their points and then go, oh, oh, that's what you mean. And then understanding starts to happen. Softening of heart starts to happen. Tone starts to be toned down. These are the things that need to happen if we're going to effectively engage with and communicate with one another. Number 6, talk less and give the other person space to respond, because it's a dialogue. Dialogue means you are both responding to one another point after point, which is different than a diatribe where one person dominates, and from a debate where you try to prove each other wrong. I can tell you my skills as a podcaster for the past 15 years have been very helpful because I have learned how to listen to someone talking and then having conversations. And so when you're used to doing that, it's definitely helpful as an applicable life skill. One basic formula you can do is agree with some part of what the person said, which will acknowledge them. When someone says something and then you agree, even like a little bit, and I've done this a few times on Facebook, even today I've been doing it. People will make a point about something and I'll be like, I agree with what you're saying there. I think that's a great point. And then I have another point that I share to see if they have any agreement with that point. That's how you have these conversations. And take a breath after you say something rather than plowing through point after point after point. You want to give your conversation partner space to respond and their emotions settle. You also want them to process. This is an important part that gets lost on social media. Sometimes something is said and you don't have time to process it because you got so much tit for tat happening, especially if you have multiple people engaging in it. You don't have time to process, oh, wow, that makes sense, but I'm trying to make sense of why it makes sense. So give people space. It helps the other person feel that they are being heard. Number 7, avoid using the word but. I think it's great, all the things you're saying, and I think it's wonderful, and thank you for sharing all those awesome things that you just shared, but what did the but just do? It just negated all the good stuff you just said. As well, look at but in a conversation as a subtraction sign. It erases everything that was said. Instead of using it, respond with instead of but, and at the same time, or ask a question that starts with how or what. So instead of but, use how or what. Wow, that rhymed and I didn't mean for it to. If you hear yourself saying yes, but, it's a pretty good indication you're trying to score a point instead of trying to keep the dialogue constructive. So catch yourself. Try not to use but. Get your but out of it. And put your what in it instead. Number 8, tell stories. Specifics rather than generalities keep the conversation about different perspectives going. You're having a conversation with a coworker about why you think a new employee should be freed up to help your team instead of theirs, rather than saying things like, we never get all the resources we need and your team has way fewer responsibilities. Instead, give an example. You know, when we had to put together that presentation last month on a tight timeline, we could have used an extra person to do a certain portion of the research, which would have saved us that day. What you're doing here is you're making an argument about the project, your team's productivity, your office's overall goals, rather than an argument about you specifically or your colleague. It's really not difficult to do this. It does require you to think about what you want to say and how you phrase it before letting the words come out of your mouth. We could do a much better job in this area. Tell stories. Explain why. One of the things I put up on social media yesterday was, okay, there is this narrative that racism doesn't exist and that all people have this equal opportunity. And so I don't know why we're having this conversation. So I put out a call. All right, black person who feels that this is real, tell me your story. And so when I put out that call for people to tell their story, guess what, guys? I've got a lot of stories. A lot of stories. A lot of people have said, hey, all right, here's why it's real. Some of them have made me cry my eyes out. Oh my God. Like, do we realize how serious this is? And can you imagine from their perspective, hearing that their thought pattern and their belief is not real from people who have no clue what they're talking about? And so I look forward to sharing those soon, by the way, in the proper context. But that's just an example of why stories are so effective, is you want to hear is there's a real person behind that. And then the last one, and then we'll come to you. Resist the current vogue to be provocative. Oh my God. Like, if we could just take away this idea that if you make a comment, it has to be salacious. It has to be, the memes are the worst. Oh my God. Like, please stop posting memes as a response to somebody trying to have a valid conversation with you and engaging you. Memes only incite problems, unless they're funny. Maybe they break the ice a little bit if you use a meme in that context. But some of the memes lately have been, well, look at all the white people that get killed by white people and the black people by black people. Look at these statistics. I'm like, dude, do you think you're helping matters in the conversation? No. But it's provocative. The best argument isn't necessarily the one you can hashtag or is going to go viral on the internet. All of these are considered punches. Communicating that way is very expensive in terms of the emotional toll. Resist the vogue for being provocative and take the opportunity when you can to neutralize the emotional load of the conversation and disarm the moment. It often comes down to your word choice and the tone of your words. So guys, now more than ever, we need this applicable life skill of effectively engaging people in conversation that we happen to disagree with. And guys, disagreement does not mean that person is your mortal enemy. Can we get away from, I know we're in a presidential election year and people like to view a black versus white, not literal black versus white, but differences of opinion and, oh, well, you're this and I'm that, and so we're mortal enemies. And I'm going, no, we're not. We just have a difference of opinion. And differences of opinion do not make you an enemy. They just make you different. And if we can recognize and put value in those differences, how much better a society could we be if we start learning from one another about why we believe what we believe? All right, let's come over here to Instagram first. Then I'll pop over to Facebook, finally to YouTube. Thank you all for being here today on Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website. Let's see what you guys have to say. Makeup by Crystal says, where do you do your live videos here get saved? So thank you for that. Yeah, I save it to my camera roll here, but I put them on IGTV. So if you want to watch it on replay after the show's over, just go to Living Low Carb Band here on Instagram, and you can watch the replay on IGTV. We also put them up over on YouTube. Just type in Jimmy Rants, you'll find the show. And then we also have them at jimmyrants.com. So thank you for that. Kelly says, thank you for always helping me. You're welcome. Thanks for letting me help you. Coco says, we love you here in San Diego. Oh, thank you. I hope to get out to California sometime when our coronavirus stuff passes. I would love to get out on the West Coast again. Jack says, I just find I have no energy to try to have a debate with someone who's already made up their mind and immediately goes on the defense instead of having a discussion. Yeah, Jax, that is unfortunate. I will tell you, I had, and I've told this story before, I had a friend that I've known in the health space for a very long time. And she wrote me a DM here on Instagram, and she said, oh, you need to stop talking about everything in your work. You need to only talk about Black Lives Matter. You're exerting your white privilege and blah, 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 blah. She blasted me with all this stuff just out of the blue. And of course, as soon as I got blasted, and anybody would respond this way, you don't respond well to that. I was like, whoa. So it took me aback. And so I think we're having a little bit of that kind of issue going on, that people feel like they're being blasted, which is why taking a softer tone and using some of the tips that we talked about in this article here is going to be helpful when you start engaging in conversation with someone. Had she said, hey, I know your heart is for people, Jimmy, and I think you could be a powerful for sharing about what some of these commonly misunderstood terms are, things like Black Lives Matter. You know, if you don't know, that actually means da 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 da. I mean, can you imagine if she took that soft tone and actually was a friend to me, how much more receptive I would have been? But no, she got mad because I didn't like the way she blasted me with it, and it took one of her friends to reach out to me to be that softer tone and to explain things. So I get it. The energy level is low because of that, because of people having such a knee-jerk reaction. This was so informative and logical. You're welcome, Linda. Thank you for being here and watching this. All right, thank you, Instagram. We're going to pop over now to my Facebook page, see what you guys have to say. What's up, Facebook? Scroll back to the top, see if you have any comments on this one. Liz says, nice to see you again. Well, welcome back. I've been here since March. Tammy says, I really needed this today. I've been off of social media to save my sanity. Well, Tammy, you can always come on Jimmy Rants. People often make fun of my show, Jimmy Rants. I don't want to watch a guy ranting all the time. I'm like, well, that's just the name of the show. Don't think I'm that screaming guy up there in that image. I'm not. Sometimes I am, but most of the time I try to be cool and chill and righteously indignant about things. All right, thank you, Facebook. Let's go over here to my YouTube channel. See what you guys have to say. Hello, Kim Call. Val says, no one wants a debate in a civil way anymore. Yeah, that's sad too. Johanna from Finland. Thank you for watching all the way from Finland. Hello, Strength Addicts. Tofik says, hi, Jimmy. Would you have the opportunity to interview Dr. Ron Rosedale? Oh, I've interviewed Ron a million times, dude. Go look up llvlc.com. I've had him on many times. Shirley says, I have paused more mid-sentence than I ever have before. Words are so important to get right because once you said it, it's out there. People jump on it before you have a chance to clarify. And that's unfortunate that there is this jumping on you. But I love your strategy. Pause. How many people would stay out of trouble if they just pushed the pause button on their big fat mouth before they said things that they regret later? It definitely would keep people out of trouble if they did that. So, all right, guys, I hope this was an informative Jimmy Rants here today. If you have trouble communicating with people you disagree with, hopefully this taught you skills that are applicable so that you can have conversations that are actually productive, and that maybe they learn something from you and you learn something from them, and at the end of the day, we all broaden our perspective and become better humans as a result. That's it for this episode of Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website, and as always, if you want to engage live in the content, you got to go follow me. I'm over here on Instagram. I'm at Living Low Carb Man, LIVINLOWCARBMAN. Once you're there, engage live. We also do lots of stories and main posts. We try to give you a lot of great information here on Instagram. We do simulcast live over here on my Facebook page, so thank you guys for being here today. We also simulcast over on my YouTube stream, so thank you for watching the live stream. If you missed the live, you can watch it on replay on IGTV. We also throw the past episodes up over on YouTube. Type in a keyword Jimmy Rants, you will find the show. Tuesday, that's what today is, we air the best of Jimmy Rants. So today we've got an episode about Diabetes Canada now embracing low carb and some of the other research things that have been out there about low carb and diabetes that we talked about here on this show. That's airing today, llvlc.com. And then finally, jimmyrants.com is the official website for this show. Go check out all the past videos. And if you like what you get here and you feel like I add value to your life, then you can add value to my life by clicking on that Patreon link. And any kind of donation would certainly help us keep this show on the air. Well, that's it for now, you guys. Let me pop off of here, and we'll be back again real soon. Bye. All right. Try to provide content that's pretty widespread. I mean, it would be super easy for me to come on here and just keto, fasting all the time. And I certainly do that and have done that and still do that and keep you up to date on all the latest news in health. That is my role, but I like these mindset and kind of perspective types of ones because sometimes all the diet advice in the world doesn't help if you don't have like a good mental mindset about things. And so I'm always going to try to provide that and be a conduit of great information along that line as well. So thank you guys for being here. I'm not sure I'm going to do a Jimmy Rants later today. I did sleep well last night, so and I do have that interview at 2 o'clock. So let's just see how I do. Man, I just missed everything, says Jenny. That's okay, Jenny. It will be up for replay if you want to watch it as soon as I'm over. It'll also be if you're on Instagram, on IGTV, and also on YouTube. So we have lots of places you can watch, but definitely watch this one, girl, because it's helpful for all the easiness of these conversations we're having out there. How people mess things up in the way they talk to each other. And so hopefully some good life skills in here that can be applied to our conversations here on Facebook. But thank you guys for being here. We'll see you again soon. Bye.